Good morning, Community RJ. Back with another video, so let's get to it. Today's random Mike Schmidt item of the day from 2004, the Topps Signature Series release. So this was a series, separate product, separate release, similar to Topps Archives signature version these days, or Topps all-time favorites back in the day. 110 cards of retired baseball legends, sometimes just good players or whoever they could find willing to sign. Obviously, lots of parallels and autographs in the product, randomly inserted, but big names, Mike Schmidt being one of them, obviously done up just like the Topps product of that year, although they had the old school Topps logo there. Really cool card. It's good for you if you want to do your Hall of Fame sets with these cards because it's got career stats. I haven't looked to see the ability to get a full set of these cards, but if you want to get one or two for your Hall of Fame binder and you are like me and you want career stats, this would be a good card to add to anybody's set. Today's random baseball item of the day, this one is from 2017. The Alex Bregman complete set rookie variation. Now, Alex Bregman is on the free agent block this offseason. I know there's talk out here in Philly of getting rid of Alec Bohm and making a play for Alex Bregman. I don't know what's right or wrong about that, but this is his complete set variation. It's not gradable. There's a divot in the corner right there on the edge, right about there if you see it. So it's not worth grading. It just sits in my box of stuff that I look at once in a while. Every once in a while I think about at least putting it in a one-touch or a top loader. But yeah, my random baseball item of the day. All right, so it is Friday. It is a fifth Friday, and as I have been doing all year long, today is a Fifth Friday Forgotten, where I talk about a member of the Hall of Fame who is lesser known to most people, if not completely unknown to some people, oftentimes because they were either executives or managers or perhaps Negro League players or 18th century players or any number of reasons they might not be well known. In this particular case, this guy is one of those players who is in the Hall of Fame primarily because of the people he played around. Many people speculate not necessarily because of his own talents, although we will talk about that a little later. He was a member of one of the greatest baseball teams of all time, or one of the most legendary teams of all time, those being the mid-1800s, 1880s, or I'm sorry, the mid-1890s Baltimore Orioles. It is one Mr. Joe Kelley, spelled Kelley. There's some debate as to whether or not it should be spelled that way. Obviously, vintage sources spell it both ways, so you can take your pick. This is his card from the 1994 American Origins of Baseball, American Archives Origins of Baseball box set. Here he is. This is a reprint of his T206 card, his only T206 cards. It actually shows him with Toronto of the Eastern League. He was a player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, player manager at one time too. Now, Joe Kelley often gets mistaken for one George Kelley, High Pockets Kelley. George High Pockets Kelley, mostly known for that awesome nickname of High Pockets, but also some people might hear the name Kelley and automatically think of King Kelley. This is the reprint of the 1887, I believe, Allen and Ginter. It might be 1888. Somebody will correct me on that. But we're talking about Joe Kelley today. Joe Kelley is not as well known as his contemporaries. He was on a team with several Hall of Famers, as you'll see. And whether or not he was or was not a deserving member of the Hall of Fame, let's take a look. Let me take a moment now and introduce you to the life and times of Mr. Joseph James Kelley. Hang on a second and take a listen. Joseph James Kelley was born on December 9th, 1871 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. His parents were Irish immigrants fleeing the famine happening in that country, and they quickly established a large Irish Catholic family in the neighborhood. Joseph attended the parochial grammar school in Cambridge and eventually attended St. Thomas Aquinas College, where he was a star pitcher for that team. During his time at college, Joe Kelley worked at a number of different jobs to support himself, including one stay at the John P. Lowell Arms Company, at which he also played on the baseball team for that company. It was here that he was discovered by Lowell of the New England League, and he was quickly signed to a contract. He was a right-handed pitcher and hitter and played all positions, including outfield and infield, because he was such a great athlete. During the season of 1891, Joe went 10-3 for Lowell, batting .323 to lead the league. Unfortunately, Lowell was not a financially stable team, and they folded in July. At the end of that month, the National League's Boston Bean Eaters gave Kelley a trial. Unfortunately, he did not fare too well in 12 games for Boston, hitting just .244, and was not re-signed. During that winter, the Oakland Colonels of the Pacific Coast League offered Kelley $1,200 to sign with them, but Joe turned down that deal. He eventually signed with the Omaha Hogs of the Western League for the 1892 season. With Omaha, he played in 58 games, batting .316 with 19 stolen bases. He was beginning to become more of an everyday player rather than a pitcher. Seemingly destined never to play for a single franchise for an entire season, in July, Omaha sold Joe's contract to the National League Pittsburgh Pirates. Kelley played with the Pirates until early September, at which time the new Orioles manager, Ned Hanlon, traded the team's former player-manager, George Van Haltren, to the Pirates for Kelley and $2,000 cash. Joe initially declined to report to the Orioles, fearing this would be yet another team that folded soon after his arrival. But after some time and reflection, Kelley agreed and joined the Orioles to finish out the season. Van Haltren was a popular player-manager, and the fans were none too happy that Ned Hanlon gave up on him for an unproven rookie such as Kelley. However, Ned Hanlon had had his eye on Kelley for some time, and through a lot of work and practice, developed Kelley into a star that would soon shine brightly. In 1893, Joe hit .305 with 27 doubles, 16 triples, and 33 stolen bases. He eventually was moved to left field, where he occupied that position for many years to come in Baltimore. In fact, it was at this time that he was paired with John McGraw, Hughie Jennings, and Wee Willie Keeler to form the backbone of the great Oriole dynasty of the 1890s. By 1894, the National League was a 12-team circuit with no true Major League competition. Pirates owner William Chase Temple decided to create a Silver Loving Cup to be awarded to the winner of a postseason series between the pennant-winning first-place team and its second-place challenger. The Baltimore Orioles appeared in every Temple Cup series ever played during the years 1894 through 1897. In fact, they appeared second in 1898 just for good measure. This was a team that was stacked with talent and probably the best glory years of Oriole baseball. Wilbert Robinson at catcher, Dan Bruthers at first base, Hughie Jennings at shortstop, John McGraw at third base, outfielders Wee Willie Keeler and Joe Kelley, as well as manager Ned Hanlon, all represented members of the Hall of Fame. This was an enormous, talented team. Exploits from the 1890s Baltimore Orioles are legendary, and I highly recommend everybody take some time to research them. Of note, the Baltimore Orioles perfected the Oriole chop, a method of hitting down on the baseball and popping it up off the plate so high that it was easy for the batter to reach first base before the fielder could field it. They perfected the double steal, the hit and run, and any number of offensive tricks and trades. In February of 1899, Ned Hanlon made a deal taking primary ownership of the Brooklyn franchise of the National League. It is possible that he read the tea leaves, so to speak, knowing that the National League was about to contract from 12 teams down to 8, beginning in 1900. Either way, he moved most of his stars from the Orioles to the Brooklyn Dodgers, although they were called the Superbas at that time. Interestingly to note, with Ned Hanlon's infusion of new talent, the Superbas, or the Dodgers, nevertheless the National League's Brooklyn franchise, actually won the pennant in 1899 and repeated in 1900. So it is incorrect to say that the first pennant for Brooklyn, or the first championship, was in 1955. During the winter of 1901 to 1902, rumors circulated that Kelley would be hired as the new manager of the New York Giants. He ended that speculation by signing on with John McGraw, who had assumed managership over the new American League Baltimore Orioles. This came with a piece of stock in the company. It is often recorded that John McGraw and Ban Johnson did not get along in the early days of the American League. One of the problems McGraw found was that the umpiring was of very poor quality, and he often got into arguments with the umpires. This led to repeated fines, suspensions, and even some bans for periods of time, upon which eventually McGraw had enough, and he took the New York Giants managership that Kelley turned down. Kelley, in return, no longer having the services of his best friend or compatriot as a supervisor on the Orioles, began to look elsewhere as well and found a willing taker over in Cincinnati. Kelley signed on in the middle of the 1902 season to manage and be a player for the Cincinnati team in the National League, and he held that position through the 1906 season. In 1907, and lured by a $5,000 contract that made him the wealthiest minor league player to date, Joe jumped to the Toronto Maple Leafs of the Eastern League. The following year, he jumped back to Major League Baseball by an equally lucrative contract for $5,500 for the National League Boston franchise. And then once again, returning to Toronto the following year, Joe spent the following years up through 1914 in Toronto. Following the 1914 season, Joe chose to retire as an active player in the game, although he did serve various teams in other capacities. He was a chief scout for the New York Yankees for many years and handled player negotiations and other front office duties. In 1926, he rejoined Wilbert Robinson, his old teammate, along with Joe McGinnity as coaches on the Brooklyn Robins, but that was a one-year deal. Following this stint, Joe retired from any affiliation with baseball other than attending old-timers games. He had retired to Baltimore and was heavily involved in Baltimore politics, clearly in the Democratic campaign status, being a good Irish Catholic as he was. He was employed many different governmental officials with Baltimore. He had married. He had 2 sons. And eventually he died on August the 14th, 1943. Joe was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1971, part of 7 veteran players and executives inducted that year. It was the same year Satchel Paige was the first Negro League player to be elected to the Hall of Fame. A lot of people question whether Joe deserves to be on that Hall of Fame dais. We'll allow you guys to debate that as you see fit. Okay, so I hope that gives you all a little bit more of a sense of the type of person Joe Kelley was. If not the player, you got to learn a little bit about his contributions to his team. His stats are readily available. Let's talk about his stats for a second, though. He had a career 50.4 WAR. Standard nomenclature, standard convention suggests that a 70 WAR is a highly probable Hall of Famer, 70 career WAR. And then again, a 50 to a 70 is a borderline, but let's talk about it kind of a guy. So theoretically, he's a borderline, let's talk about kind of a guy. He had 2,220 career hits. Not obviously not 3,000, but then again, they played a lot less games. Back in his tenure, although Cap Anson did have 3,000 career hits, but he's the only one from the 1800s to reach that milestone. And he had a 317 career batting average, which is pretty darn impressive. So, you can make the case from his numbers alone, he should be a Hall of Famer, I think. I think he's more forgotten, again, because he played on those great Orioles teams. That's where the primary legend of the Orioles existed, and he was a member of that team. The four great players from that team were Willie Keeler, Hughie Jennings, John McGraw, and Joe Kelley, obviously. Now, other players played on the Orioles teams during that span. Wilbert Robinson was the catcher. Ned Hanlon, obviously, a Hall of Famer, who was the manager. And other people came through, Dan Bruthers, notably. But he was a product of that great Orioles team more so than his own. But at the same time, people just forget about the man. For example, he has 72 baseball cards, according to the tradingcarddatabase.com, and nothing in the more recent sets. So, for example, you're not going to see a card of him in Fleer Greats, Panini Cooperstown. The Panini Cooperstown one issue of Panini Cooperstown had him on the limited edition serial number to 500 plaques, but no regular card in the release. He's not in any modern release where they put an insert set into archives or any of the other gallery into Panini doesn't put him in their products. He's just not even thought about when they do these retrospective sets ever. He's just forgotten again, which is why I'm doing this. Trying to get you guys all to understand why Joe Kelley deserves another look. So that's what I'm doing. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you took a little bit more with you, and maybe it inspires you to go look up a little bit of information about Joe Kelley and the 1890s Baltimore Orioles and the great team that it was. So that's all I have for you today. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, no trivia on Sunday. I'm away this weekend, so you shan't see me. I'll be back Monday. We'll start up again with the trivia prizes. Maybe do some World Series things because the World Series will be over by then. I don't have a dog in the fight on this one, so I really don't care who wins. But yeah, the World Series will be over. We can talk more about World Series things at that time. Anyway, again, I hope you enjoyed this. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you on Monday. All right? Take care.